Hey there Matrix, welcome to Educate. I've planned this wonderful revision videos for you. Today we're gonna do the first part one. So let's look at these topics that we need to cover. First, we need to know about low pressure systems. We need to know specifically about the mid-latitude cyclone, the tropical cyclone. We need to also know about high pressure systems, the Kalahari high pressure, the South Indian and the South Atlantic, as well as some traveling disturbances. And in our third part, we need to cover the valley climates as well as urban climates. So these are all the topics that you do in climatology in term 1, geography grade 12. So in this video, we're only going to do the first part, which are the low pressure systems, particularly the mid-latitude cyclone and the tropical cyclone. So this will be part 1 of the video, and I will release part 2 probably next week. So now let us look first, where can you find these videos? I've already made full detailed videos on this already. This is just a link that points to my geography playlist for grade 12s. So now let us just look first at the low pressure systems. So now we're going to start with the mid-latitude cyclone. So basically a mid-latitude cyclone, it is questioned using a synoptic weather map or maybe a cross-sectional view. So starting with the synoptic weather map, how do we see that this is a proper mature mid-latitude cyclone? You're gonna see this pointing red and this pointing. This tells us that this is a mature mid-latitude cyclone. How do we see now? Let us look at these points. These three things are evidences that are observable within a diagram. Let's say, for example, they just give you this synoptic weather map, and then now they ask that is the mid-latitude cyclone mature or not? So now a mature mid-latitude cyclone has a cold and a warm front. You can see that here. This is the cold front, and then it also has got a warm front. This is the warm front. So if you can identify that in a diagram, then you can conclude that this is a mature mid-latitude cyclone. Remember that you need to take down the evidences straight from the diagram. So the diagram must depict that you've got a cold front as well as a warm front. So now the pressure at the center of a mid-latitude cyclone must be below 1000 hectopascals. So now if you zoom into the pressure, we are talking about the atmospheric pressure at the center. Particularly in this one, I'm not sure if it is clear, but this is 988 hectopascals. So the lowest pressure that is found at the center of a mid-latitude cyclone, we must make sure that it is below 1000. So this 988, it tells us that the low pressure system is a mid-latitude cyclone because it has got a low pressure that is below 1000 hectopascals. And another evidence that you can note down from a synoptic weather map, the low pressure system, it is found closer to the land. Particularly, you can see it is closer to Cape Town or to the Western Cape of South Africa. So you can see that basically here, the mid-latitude cyclone, this system, it is closer to the land. This is the land. You can see this is Alexander Bay, this is Cape Town, this is Port Elizabeth. So this is closer to the land. So its proximity to the land, it tells you that this is a mid-latitude cyclone that is mature. So please look out for these evidences when you are given a synoptic weather map. So now you can also be given a diagram like this one, which is known as a cross-sectional view. A cross-sectional view basically tells you the side view. How does the mid-latitude cyclone look like when you look at it from the side? We assume that you are actually having the mid-latitude cyclone at your side. You're actually looking it straight up with your eyes. This is how it looks like. So now this one, the synoptic weather map view, it is the view that the satellite actually gets, not you. So now if you look at it from the side, what do you see? You must be able to see a cold front that is represented by a curved line like this. And you must be able also to see a warm front that is usually a straight line. It's usually a straight line, something like this. So now the general movement of a mid-latitude cyclone is eastwards. So this is towards the east. So you can say it's eastwards, or you can say it moves from west to east. It is the same thing. So this is the general direction of movement of a mid-latitude cyclone. So now, please let us not make this mistake. When they ask of direction of a mid-latitude cyclone, you talk about eastwards. Is different from the word circulation. Circulation and direction are not the same things. So a mid-latitude cyclone occurs in winter. During winter, this is the season. So basically, mid-latitude cyclones affect, or they actually are closer to the land during the winter. So now its general direction of movement is eastwards, as we have already said, and it is driven by westerlies to move in that direction. So basically the westerly winds are the ones that are pushing a mid-latitude cyclone to move from the west to the east, or it is moving eastwards. It is because we have got westerly winds, or the westerlies, those warm westerlies that are coming from the 30 degrees line of latitude. So now the mid-latitude cyclone basically forms along the polar front at the 60 degrees line of latitude, in case you might need that. And then basically the winds that contribute to the formation of mid-latitude cyclones are two. We have got cold polar easterlies and we have got warm westerlies. They actually converge and they end up having a frictional drag, causing a mid-latitude cyclone to occur. So if they can ask in an exam question, which winds contribute to the formation of a mid-latitude cyclone, you have to mention the cold polar easterlies as well as the warm westerlies. So now this is the matter of concern. When they ask about circulation or rotation of air within a mid-latitude cyclone, they want to know whether it is clockwise or anti-clockwise. So when you talk about circulation of air, when you say circulation, just means moving in circles. It is moving in circles. But when you say direction of movement, we're talking about eastwards or westwards or whatever other direction in the cardinal point system. So here, when you talk about air circulation within a mid-latitude cyclone, you say that it is clockwise. Because remember that a mid-latitude cyclone is actually a low pressure system. And we know that whenever we have got a low pressure system, the air circulation within a low pressure system is clockwise. So the air circulation or the rotation of air, whenever you see the word circulation or rotation, you have to mention clockwise or anti-clockwise. So do not confuse it to direction. When they ask about direction of movement of a mid-latitude cyclone, it is eastwards. But when they talk about the circulation of air, it is actually clockwise because it is a low pressure system. Because they can ask, give a reason for your answer. Why do you say it's clockwise? It is because a mid-latitude cyclone is a low pressure system. And in a low pressure system, we know that air circulation is clockwise. It's clockwise, just like the clock. And then now, this clockwise rotation of air within a mid-latitude cyclone actually cause what is known as backing. What we know as backing. So backing is actually a change in the wind direction, whereby winds that were actually moving this way, let us just say these are northwesterly winds, they were moving this way, they actually end up rotating. They actually end up rotating and they end up moving something in a way like this. So they were moving like northwesterly, now they move southwesterly. So they don't really use diagrams to depict this, so don't worry about knowing and understanding the diagram here. But basically, backing, it is the change of wind direction in the southern hemisphere. So whenever you hear about backing, it is the change in the wind direction that happens in the southern hemisphere. So it basically means that the wind is changing direction. What is the reason for backing, or what causes backing? It is because of this clockwise rotation of air within a mid-latitude cyclone. That is why the air changes direction in the southern hemisphere, and we say that is known as the backing of the wind. So now, most commonly when they give you a cross-sectional view, they want you to explain weather conditions. These ones are a must know, the weather conditions near the cold front, because most of the times when they ask about weather conditions, they say cold front. They don't really say mid-latitude cyclone. So now we need to know first of all about the movement of air near the cold front. So basically remember that the cold front consists of cold air behind it, and we say that cold air moves faster in the mid-latitude cyclone. And then now the cold front, we say that it has got a steeper pressure gradient. It just simply means that there are strong winds near the cold front. So now this steeper pressure gradient, it causes warm moist air to rapidly rise. So in a sense, we say that the cold dense air, remember that we have got cold dense air that is trying to move here under the warm air. Remember that in the warm sector, we have got warm air. So now this warm air, it is forced to rapidly rise. Use the word rapidly rise to emphasize that there is a steep pressure gradient and the air within the warm sector is forced to rise quickly. That's what it means, rapidly rise. So basically, the cold dense air forces the warm moist air to rapidly rise above the cold air, and then this will result in the formation of tall cumulonimbus cloud. So basically, the types of clouds that form near the cold front are known as cumulonimbus cloud. They are tall and they are dark, and they result in heavy rainfall, or you can say torrential rainfall. So heavy rainfall, thunderstorms, as well as strong winds occur near the cold front due to this. So now these are the must know conditions. You must really know them, the conditions that occur near the cold front. This is all due to the steeper pressure gradient that causes the warm air, the warm moist air to rapidly rise. And this rapid rising of warm moist air will cause the formation of cumulonimbus clouds. And we know that cumulonimbus clouds are associated with heavy rainfall or torrential rainfall. So now these ones are also questioned but not usually examined. So warm front has got a gentle pressure gradient. It is just opposite to the cold front. So the warm front here, we have got a gentle pressure gradient. So now this gentle pressure gradient suggests that the warm moist air, it is not actually forced to rise with a lot of pressure as compared to the one on the cold front. So now basically when warm moist air in the warm sector rises here along the cold front, it doesn't really rise with a lot of pressure. So we don't use the word rapidly rise, which say just it just rises gently. It rises gently along the warm front, and then when it reaches the top, the top atmosphere or the higher layers of the atmosphere, it will actually form nimbostratus clouds. So the clouds that form near the warm front, they are known as the nimbostratus clouds. So nimbostratus clouds do not really bring heavy rainfall, they just bring light rain. So it is not usually examined, the conditions near the warm front, but the ones on the cold front are usually asked. But you must know them both because you never know who's setting the exam. So now basically that's the basic structure of a mid-latitude cyclone. Let us now look at these impacts. So basically, since we say that they are cumulonimbus clouds, so the cumulonimbus clouds that form ahead of the cold front due to that rapidly rising warm moist air will actually bring winter rainfall. Remember, we have said that the mid-latitude cyclone only forms during winter. So now we say that winter rainfall will occur due to these cumulonimbus clouds. And then now basically it has got a couple of impacts. It can be positive or negative, and these are usually asked in your paragraph questions, whereby you are told to write a paragraph of approximately 8 lines describing the impacts. So now they can impact the natural or the physical environment. When we talk about the natural or the physical environment, we are talking about the soil, we are talking about the habitats of natural species. Basically, it's all about the environment, not us as humans. So torrential rainfall can actually cause flooding, and then we know that when we have got flooding, it can actually damage vegetation. It can damage the plants and everything that is actually coming up from the soil. And then we know that some of the species or some of the animals, they actually stay within that vegetation. So when the vegetation is damaged, the species habitats will actually be destroyed. Or maybe you can say that the biodiversity is reduced because now the species are being destroyed due to these floods. So now snowfalls can also be dangerous for livestock because remember that livestock, it can actually die from snow. So we didn't mention it, but a cold front, behind the cold front, there are actually cumulus clouds, and those cumulus clouds can actually bring snow. So those snowfalls can be dangerous for what? For livestock. And then now let us look at the strong winds as well. Remember, we've said that there's a steep pressure gradient along the warm front, the cold front. So it generally means that there are strong winds. And those strong winds can actually damage crops or they can actually damage vegetation. So now, humans, how are we as humans affected by the mid-latitude cyclone? So now heavy rain leads to poor visibility. For example, you are driving your car, maybe around eThekwini or something like that, and then there is a mid-latitude cyclone approaching. Let's just assume that it has reached eThekwini, which is so rare. And then now, due to this heavy rainfall from the cumulonimbus clouds, will actually have poor visibility. You'll not be able to see the road properly. and then now this will actually cause accidents basically. And then extreme cold can also lead to power cuts. You can see most of the times in winter or during winter, there are a lot of power cuts and Eskom is not able to continuously provide electricity. This is because when they're actually cold, it is actually hard to actually, I don't know, to make the electricity to be on forever. I don't know whatever scientific reason that is for, but basically this extreme cold will lead to power cuts and this will disrupt human activity. And then we also have got other positive impacts is that the winter rainfall, it actually allows for us to grow crops during winter, because remember that this is occurring in winter and usually there is no rainfall during winter. So now we have got winter rainfall due to this mid-latitude cyclone. We already know that this winter rainfall will allow us to be able to grow crops and eventually to benefit our economy. So it can have positive impact. It can also have got negative impact. So now production of winter crops actually increase the GDP. This is actually an economic reasons. It's an economic reason, but it actually benefits us as people because, of course, if our gross domestic product, the GDP rises, we actually have got a better standard of living. So it actually is a good thing that we can produce winter crops and then we can actually sell those winter crops, of course, and then continue running the economy. So if they can ask the positive economic impact of a mid-latitude cyclone, you can also mention this. Bear in mind that you do not write in points, you always write in paragraphs, and you do not use the word "and" to separate 2 points. Never use the word "and" when you're writing this. You can see here I've said heavy rain leads to poor visibility. You shouldn't continue and say "and this will do this." No, don't do that. Separate the point, put a full stop and write the next point in a new sentence. Do not say extreme cold can lead to power cuts and this disrupts human activity. They won't get the marks. You have to say extreme cold can lead to power cuts and you can just put a full stop there, or maybe write in another sentence that this actually disrupts human activity. So now there are a couple of solutions that you can implement to actually curb this damage of a mid-latitude cyclone. You can develop warning systems so that you can warn people when a mid-latitude cyclone actually approaches. You can use media, you can use radio, television, social media. Most of the times, most of the people use social media to do nasty things, but you can actually use it to alert people when there is an approaching mid-latitude cyclone. So you can actually evacuate the people from low-lying areas so that you can protect them from floods. Remember that floods actually attack the people that are in a low-lying area. For example, people that are staying in valleys, or at the bottom parts of the mountains. Basically, those people can be flooded away because when floods attack, they're able to destroy everything. So basically, we need to evacuate or take away those people from those low-lying areas to higher-lying areas so that we can protect them from the floods. So we can also plant winter crops that would resist the cold temperatures so that we cannot lose. Remember that we have said that production of winter crops actually helps the economy. So basically, to avoid losses, due to this mid-latitude cyclone, we should normalize planting winter crops. The winter crops can basically resist cold. Even though it is cold, they're able to grow and we can actually make productivity from them, and that productivity will eventually help us economically. So we should plant winter crops so that we can actually curb the economic crisis that will be brought by a mid-latitude cyclone. So we can also use satellite images, you can use GIS, you can use all those type of thing to be able to monitor the path of a mid-latitude cyclone, to monitor when it has developed and how is it going to move. And you can actually use this to alert people when a mid-latitude cyclone is about to come near. So basically, this is all about a mid-latitude cyclone. It's a low pressure system, remember, and you need to be able at least to grasp this concept. I have actually compiled this based on most of the questions that they usually ask on mid-latitude cyclone. What about a tropical cyclone? It is way more simpler. The tropical cyclone is easier because you are usually given paragraphs to actually answer. So most of the times the answers are found within the paragraphs. You do not really have to formulate answers from anywhere else. You have to just extract them from the paragraphs. Here's what to look for. So now the first letter of the name of a tropical cyclone, it indicates how many cyclones have attacked that area. For example, if we say we've got Batsirai attacked Madagascar, so the cyclone Batsirai here starts with a letter B. So B is the second letter of the alphabet. This tells us that Batsirai is the second cyclone to attack Madagascar. If we say we've got cyclone Eloise, E is actually the fifth letter of the alphabet. It means that Eloise is the fifth tropical cyclone to attack the area. If we say tropical cyclone Ana attacked Mozambique, it just means that Ana is the first tropical cyclone to attack Mozambique because A is the first letter of the alphabet. So basically the first letter tells you everything. But I can actually give you this low pressure system. So in a low pressure system, you also look at the pressure at the center and you also look at the eye to say that this is a mature tropical cyclone. So a mature tropical cyclone, it has got the low pressure center, it's below 990 hectopascals, and it is actually a big low pressure system. It has got also a fully developed eye, which is represented or indicated by this symbol. So whenever you see this symbol that look like this, it shows that this is the eye. Basically, the eye is a region that is very calm and it does not have any clouds, or it is just clear skies, but it is surrounded by heavy rainfall. We're gonna see how does that work. So now you also have a dangerous semicircle. So the dangerous semicircle, it is basically this area of the tropical cyclone. This area of the tropical cyclone is the most intense area. It is the one that is the most dangerous. It is the one that actually brings the most dangerous conditions. Very strong winds. We say they are gale force winds. They are very strong winds and there is heavy rainfall. But now to explain the formation of the dangerous semicircle, we can say it is known as a dangerous semicircle or is a left-hand quadrant. So the dangerous semicircle is actually formed by winds that are rotating in the cyclone, and then they are actually going to meet with the winds that are actually driving the cyclone, and then forward into the left-hand quadrant, and then this will result in high wind speeds. So now there's a lot of application here that you need to take notice of. We have got the winds that are rotating within the cyclone, and we also have got the winds that are driving the cyclone. These are the tropical easterlies. These are the winds that are basically driving the cyclone. So when these two winds actually meet with each other, when these two winds actually meet into each other, they actually meet into this left-hand quadrant. They actually meet into this left-hand quadrant, causing high wind speeds and dangerous conditions, a lot of storm surges, and eventually a lot of rainfall. So now these are the requirements for the formation of a tropical cyclone. I have shaded and colored them according to their importance. So now, first of all, we have got here a warm ocean. This is the first mandatory requirement for a proper tropical cyclone to be able to develop. So the warm ocean must be at least 28 degrees Celsius and above. So you must have a warm ocean that is 28 degrees Celsius and above. Usually the tropical cyclones actually form on the tropical oceans. Tropical oceans, for example, we're talking about the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean is very warm. You already know that. That is why usually the tropical cyclones occur there and attack places like Madagascar, like Mozambique. And then the Coriolis force is also required. That is why the tropical cyclone occurs or it forms between 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south. But it does not form between 5 degrees north and 5 degrees south. So basically, remember that between 5 degrees north and 5 degrees south of the equator, it is very closer to the equator. And the closer you are to the equator, there's a weak Coriolis force. So in other ways, we actually need a lot of Coriolis force to actually make the tropical cyclone to have spiraling winds. So now basically, when you are very, very, very closer to the equator, we are particularly talking about when you are 5 degrees north or 5 degrees south of the equator, there is a weak Coriolis force. Hence, a tropical cyclone cannot form in those regions, but generally it forms between the 30 degrees north and the 30 degrees south line of latitude. The other minor requirement is latent heat. Latent heat basically gives the tropical cyclone the energy to be able to form and to intensify. So latent heat is also a requirement. It is also required in the formation of a tropical cyclone, but basically I consider it a minor requirement as compared to the first two. So now they can actually give you a cross-sectional view. A cross-sectional view of a tropical cyclone basically has got an ocean because it actually forms on an ocean. So in this case, this is ocean F. We know that ocean F has to be a warm ocean, at least 28 degrees Celsius and above. And then now you have got a couple of things that you can notice it. So basically here at the ocean in the tropical cyclone, we need to know that there is a convergence of air. We need to know that there is a what? There is a convergence of air. This simply means that we have got air that is coming from this side and air that is coming from the other side, and it meets here at the point D. So if they can ask what is happening at D, you say that there's a convergence of warm, moist air. This air is actually coming from different high pressure cells and it converges at the low pressure center. So now basically when this air converges, it actually rises. So basically there is low pressure on the ocean, the air converges and it rises and it will form cumulonimbus clouds. That is why you can see here there are a couple of cumulonimbus clouds here. These cumulonimbus clouds are actually formed due to this converging warm moist air. So when this warm moist air arises, it cools and it condenses, it forms cumulonimbus clouds. But you can see that in between the cumulonimbus cloud, there is a region C, and this region C, you can see that the region C does not have any clouds. It has got clear conditions and there is no rainfall. So the region C, it is actually the eye at a side view of a tropical cyclone. It is actually the very same thing as the eye that you see here at the low pressure, at the plan view basically. So this eye symbol here that you see at the plan view, it is the same thing as this region. It is actually this region, but this is the way you view it is different. So now at region C, which is the eye, we have got cold air that is descending. You can see here we are given an arrow that indicates that we have got cold air that is descending. So at the eye, if they say explain why do we have those calm conditions, why do we not have clouds at the eye? Basically at the eye we have got cold air that is descending. We have got cold air that is descending. And as this cold air descends, it heats up adiabatically. So we've got cold air that is descending and it heats up adiabatically. It simply means that as this cold air moves down, it becomes warmer and warmer as it gets closer to the ocean from the upper atmosphere. As it moves down, it gets warmer and warmer. When you say that it heats up adiabatically, it just means that it compresses in such a way that it becomes warmer and warmer. And then this descending air cannot actually condense. Remember that for air to be able to condense, it must cool. Warm, moist air must cool down and condense at the upper atmosphere. But here we have got the opposite. We have got cold air that is descending and it is becoming warmer and warmer. So basically, when air becomes warmer and warmer, there is no way that it's going to reach condensation. So this descending air cannot condense. This will result in calm, stable, and cloudless conditions in the eye. So they can ask you to explain why the conditions in the eye are very calm. This is due to this cold descending air that warms up adiabatically. It cannot condense, therefore we will not be able to form clouds in any way in the region C, which is the eye. You can try to look for the impacts of a tropical cyclone. I've given you 80% of the work. Now you have to complete it. Go ahead and try to look at the impacts of tropical cyclones on natural environment, humans, and economy. Also go and try to look at a dissipating tropical cyclone. What causes a tropical cyclone to dissipate? Thank you for watching part 1 of the video. Don't forget to subscribe. Tell your friends to stay tuned.